Hey guys, today we'll be covering some LEGO terminology, acronyms, colloquialisms, and other phrases that you may have seen used across the LEGO Bionicle community. This will be the third part of a multiple episode sub-series of Behind the Build, where we create a LEGO encyclopedia so that you have a full understanding of the right words to use, and so that you aren't too unsure of the words that people may have been saying to you in the past. Since this is part 3, be sure to watch part 1 as well as part 2, as some of the terms like MOC and a few other things that will be mentioned in this episode won't really be explained. But yet, of course, they are explained in detail in those past episodes. The following terms are more commonly used among people who create with Bionicle pieces. However, the terms do cross over into the system builds and the system community from time to time. So whatever you build with, this will be relevant to you. Now, this list won't include words like Matoran, Toa, or Makuta, to name a few, and this is because those are more commonly associated with the lore of Bionicle, whereas this list will be focusing more on mocking terms and colloquialisms. Regardless, let's dig in. The first term is Self MOC. This refers to a Bionicle creation that is a mascot or representation of the builder. It's almost like a self-portrait to some degree. A Self MOC can be many things. It can be a favorite build that represents yourself. It can be a mascot that embodies who you are, or your overall brand, or just kind of qualities of yourself. Or it can be a literal representation of yourself. It can even be a symbolic representation of yourself. It can be many things. But basically, it's what you'd look like if you were a Bionicle. The only thing that a Self MOC cannot be is an already existing character in the Bionicle universe. So saying that Tahu is your Self MOC, sadly that doesn't count. They do need to be an original character, but they can be whatever you want them to be. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "This is my Self MOC. He's gone through a lot of different versions, but I'm really proud of him." Keetorange is the term given to the color bright light orange. The color appeared on the set Keetongu and adopted the same name as a result. It's a bit of a quicker and easier way of saying the name of this color. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, "I plan on using Keetorange on my next build." Greebles is a term that's been discussed in past videos, but I think it does have slightly different meaning when focused on Bionicle. The previous definition for Greebles was, Greebles are a fine detailing added to the surface of a larger object that makes it appear more complex, and therefore a little bit more visually interesting. It usually gives the audience an impression of increased scale. Greebles are typically common on space MOCs and mechs. You also see it in a lot of Star Wars creations as well. Greebles can range from stickers to other sorts of mechanical looking details. However, I think in the Bionicle community this term has a slightly different meaning and is more commonly used in relation to using smaller parts, typically system pieces, to add in additional details. And it has much less of a focus on space and mechanical details. You could say that Greebling a MOC could be adding some leaf pieces to it for a more jungle flair. Both variations of these terms are used throughout the Bionicle community when people are discussing things, and of course both are correct. However, in my experience there is a very slight focus shift when using this term. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "This area of my Bionicle looks nice, but I could add a few more Greebles in here to really detail it out." Up next is Inika Build. This term refers to the rough frame of the Toa Inika LEGO sets that came out in 2007. It uses pieces like an Inika torso, or other Inika limbs. It's a fairly basic frame that appeared in many LEGO sets, and it's an easy go-to for making any kind of Bionicle MOC. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, "I made this cool Toa the other day." It's an Inika build. The term chibi refers to smaller MOCs that are often a cute representation of something much larger. For example, you could build a chibi version of someone's Self MOC. And while it's not a requirement, chibi MOCs can incorporate overall very large heads that are a little bit more out of proportion with the rest of the body. And this very much helps that cuteness factor. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "Man, that chibi is adorable." Another term is Biotube. This refers to the Bionicle community on YouTube. Really, anyone who posts Bionicle related videos and interacts with the Bionicle community here is a part of Biotube. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "The Biotube community is still alive and thriving." Similarly, the term Biogram refers to the Instagram Bionicle community. If you post Bionicle creations and interact with others that do so as well on Instagram, then you're a part of Biogram. And of course there is the hashtag Biogram. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, "I really enjoy the Biogram community. Everyone is very friendly." Nitronian head design is another term that refers to a head design that uses hand connector pieces stacked on top of each other to create a really unique looking face. Often this face is intended to look more human-like, but the design can be used in many ways. To my knowledge, the design was coined by Dawn of NSSD, and this was the first MOC that used it. It is called Sandman. But don't quote me on that. Sometimes people use a Nitronian head design to create a more humanoid look for a face. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I've used a Nitronian head design on my latest MOC. MOCist is a word to describe those who build LEGO MOCs. It's of course combining the word MOC and artist. MOCist. This word is commonly used in the Bionicle and MOCpages communities. However, it can be used less commonly in other places. Often people simply just say AFOL or TFOL or KFOL depending on the age of the person, instead of the word MOCist. But whatever you say is just down to personal preference. Another variation on this term is MOCer, which essentially means the same thing. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, hey, my name's Ben Cossy and I'm a MOCist. T-torso refers to Bionicle humanoid creations that have torsos that very much resemble the letter T. This is done by building a very skinny waist with very long shoulders and very little else that smooths out the transition from one to the other. Of course, there's nothing wrong with a creation that has a T-torso, but this is just the name that you give to it. If someone wants to be very accurate with human proportions, it's best to avoid T-torso designs. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, the torso design on the creation I'm currently working on has a T-torso. MOV is another acronym, and this stands for My Own Version. It refers to building your own version of a set or a MOC. So you could say you've built your own version of your own take on the Cardist Dragon. Or maybe you could build your own version of a MOC that someone else has made. And that of course would be a MOV. So if you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, man, I really love your MOC. You know what? I love it so much that I made a MOV of it. The term color blocking refers to the act of limiting colors to one area of a MOC. This helps distinguish different elements on a MOC and clearly establish what is being communicated. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, the color blocking is very clear on this MOC. Reds are here and greens are there. Color layering refers to how colors are layered on a MOC. So for example, silver is always on top of white. It shows that the silver is armor on top of a white figure. If you were to mix colors on top and underneath of each other, it can make for a more visually confusing and messy build. But by using color blocking, it allows you to clearly distinguish the visual elements on the MOC, and it makes for a much more clean and refined build. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, on my MOC, the color layering is blue on top and green underneath. The term CCBS is an acronym that stands for Character and Creature Building System. It was introduced in 2011 with Hero Factory 2.0 and has been used in all construction themes ever since, and even some system sets as well. The story behind CCBS is that the LEGO company wanted a new building system to replace the original Bionicle system. The designers created a new and simple system designed for younger kids. The designers wished for the system to incorporate an improvement on the original system, and the end result was being a more modular and easier to assemble, as well as a more durable design. And that was CCBS. CCBS, of course, uses more ball and socket connections. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I enjoy building things with CCBS pieces. Constraction refers to constructible action figures, hence the name. This is an official LEGO term and is the name for all themes and sets like Slicers, Throwbots, Bionicle, Ben 10, Galador, and Hero Factory to name a few. Constraction has seen a wide variety of design styles, including Technic-intensive builds, usage of ball and sockets or snapping joints, large stylized parts which are quite reminiscent of action figures, or even a combination of these things all together. Since 2012 though, Constraction sets have only used the Character and Creature Building System, CCBS. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I really enjoy system sets, but man, Constraction is my favourite. Hero Factory shells. This refers to the shell pieces seen throughout CCBS sets. They come in a variety of different sizes and colours. Hero Factory bones is a term that refers to the bone or limb pieces seen throughout CCBS sets. Typically the shells go on top of these bone pieces. They also come in a variety of different sizes and colours as well. Also, an additional side note, Hero Factory can often be abbreviated to HF for convenience. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, when I make that new MOC, I'm going to need a lot of Hero Factory shells and bones. Prefab is a term often referring to arms, legs, or torso pieces that come on Bionicle sets. These are some of those pieces. These prefab limbs, or prefab torsos, are quick and easy parts that you can use when building a MOC, or putting together a set. Using these terms in a sentence, you could say, I use some prefab limbs to make this MOC's arm design. Custom is the next term. Now this has been mentioned before in past videos, and again can have many different meanings. Some of course refer to custom painting, 3D printing, or even modifying original LEGO pieces. But custom, when you're focusing more strongly on Bionicle, can also mean using Technic pieces and other Bionicle parts to create limbs, heads, arms, torsos, legs, or anything on a MOC. So this would of course be done instead of using prefab limb elements. So this is a traditional arm from a set, and this would be a custom arm, as you're able to add more detail, change its shape, change its size, change its color, and have it fit more specifically with what you're making. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I like this limb piece, but to achieve the look I'm after, I'll have to make a custom arm design. Neo-Toa is a term used to define super custom builds that are Toa. Neo-Toa typically don't use prefab limb elements and are very, very custom. Typically they can be super boxy and lift arm heavy. This style is still in use today in the Bionicle community, but was much more commonplace in the past when lift arms, lots of small Technic parts, and boxy designs were just easier to make because those were the pieces that were already available to you. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I tend to build a lot of Neo-Toa. They're just fun to make. A very similar term to this would be MOCpages Style. This more or less is the same thing as a Neo-Toa, but it's just another way of wording it. To reiterate, it means a super custom Toa build, but this is making more reference to the website MOCpages, which it was very common to see Neo-Toa being posted there before and around 2010. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, it's pretty MOCpages style to be honest, but I really like your MOC. The next term is Silver Puke. This is a MOC that uses a lot of silver parts, creating a very over-detailed and messy look. One issue with using a lot of silver is that it can create that messy look, and it's something to keep in mind if you're playing with this color. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I was making a silver and gold MOC, but I need to rework it. It's getting to Silver Puke levels. Ultra Build is another term used in relation to CCBS and Constraction themes. Typically, it makes reference to the Star Wars and Chima Constraction sets. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I found some Star Wars Ultra Build sets on clearance today. Another term is Mutter Color. This is a term used to describe some LEGO colors, specifically green, blue, and red. The Toa Mutter Gully, Tahu, and Liwa had these colors, and as a result the colors were named after them. The reason people refer to green, red, and blue as the Mutter Blue, Mutter Red, and Mutter Green is just to better differentiate the different shades of these colors. So for example, dark red, medium blue, or spring green, to name a few. This term isn't very common in system communities, and it's more exclusively a Bionicle term. In system communities, these colors are simply just blue, green, and red. Using this term in a sentence, you could say, I just sorted my colors of Mutter Blue, Mutter Green, and Mutter Red. A hand connector refers to the traditional piece used as a hand on earlier Bionicle sets. Some variations exist that are actual fists as well. If you were to use this term in a sentence, you could say, I just bought a bunch of purple hand connectors off Bricklink today. And that's it for now. If there's a term you didn't see here that you want some clarity on, or you see one that I might have missed, let me know in the comments below and I'll add it in a future episode. But since there are multiple parts to this sub-series, here's a list of the terms that I'm still planning on featuring or have previously featured. If enough terms pop up in the future, I'll do a part 4. But for now, that's it for this episode of Behind the Build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.